Witamy na Krypto. Dzisiaj wracamy do ważnego tematu, jaką są metaversy i intersekcja właśnie technologii blockchain, NFT i metaversu jako naszego przyszłego internetu. Jeżeli śledzicie wiadomości, to pewnie wiecie, że Shopify zaczął działać w tej kwestii. Macie tu bardzo ciekawy filmik, gdzie właśnie rzeczy, które będziecie kupować czy tam w metaversie, w wirtualnym świecie, czy tam w świecie rzeczywistym, będą się przenikać. Czyli jeśli kupicie rzeczy sobie dla swojego awatara w metaversie, możecie w ten sposób to kupić, że dostaniecie prawdziwe adidasy w świecie realnym. I odwrotnie, jeżeli kupicie rzeczy w świecie realnym, dostaniecie gratisowo NFT, na przykład powiedzmy to będą adidasy, gdzie możecie tych adidasów używać sobie w świecie realnym dla swojego awatara, znaczy w świecie wirtualnym. I to już się dzieje, to już jest udostępniane przez bardzo dużo firm, Nike i właśnie Shopify. Tutaj możecie sobie zobaczyć filmik.
World that recognizes and rewards loyalty. Token holders connect a crypto wallet to unlock exclusive shopping experiences. From early access to drops and limited collections, to one-of-a-kind experiences and other surprises. Start token gating on your Shopify store and unlock the power of your brand's community.
Czyli oni to nazywają token gate, no i w ten sposób możecie sobie działać ze swoimi rzeczami. To jest bardzo fajne, bo to są zwykłe produkty z naszego realnego świata, które no właśnie, skoro kupisz sobie i chcesz je nosić w życiu realnym, to czemu nie miałbyś chcieć ich nosić w świecie wirtualnym? Kolejną taką rzeczą, którą chcielibyśmy zwrócić uwagę, również jest fakt taki, że Fortune wycenia Metavers jako ekonomię, która może być warta, i tu uwaga, 13 trylionów, czyli na polskie bilionów dolarów już za 8 lat. Czyli nawet inwestując małe pieniądze, powiedzmy 500 zł w kilka metaversów na kryptoświecie, możecie naprawdę osiągnąć niesamowite zwroty. Metavers jest dużo bardziej i dużo wyżej wyceniany niż cały rynek kryptowalut, więc w porównaniu do kryptowalut to może być to dużo większy rynek, więc polecam przeczytać sobie tutaj ten właśnie artykuł z Forbesa. No to się oni tutaj opierają. No głównie chodzi o gry, właśnie wirtualną rzeczywistość, augmented reality, czyli ta pomieszana rzeczywistość wirtualna z rzeczywistą. No i właśnie te prawdziwe rzeczy, które kupujemy, które dostajemy do awatarach, jak to wszystko powoli, fajnie wchodzi nam i się miesza wraz z rozwojem wszystkich tych technologii w tym samym momencie, czyli blockchaina, technologii tworzenia obrazu, technologii tych właśnie wirtualnych okularów i tak dalej, i tak dalej. I dobrym miejscem oczywiście, żeby zacząć tutaj nasze badania, jest oczywiście Meta, czyli Facebook. Meta działał 7 lat nad metaversem, zanim ogłosili, że właśnie nad takim metaversem pracują, czyli są do przodu. Oczywiście mają w tym momencie rywali jak Apple, Microsoft, ale to, co posłuchacie, co Mark Zuckerberg mówi, jak oni się skupiają na szczegółach, jest dość intrygujące. Oczywiście wolelibyśmy, żeby ten metavers dominujący, albo te dominujące metaversy, które będą połączone w przyszłości, były to metaversy zdecentralizowane, ale Meta na pewno będzie odgrywać jakąś ważną rolę, więc nawet kupowanie sobie akcji Meta w tym momencie jest czymś, co nie jest głupie, jeśli chodzi o tutaj swoje portfolio, żeby rozszerzyło się na właśnie ten zakres metaversów. Posłuchajmy sobie, co Mark Zuckerberg mówił sobie. Tutaj jest w ogóle wypowiedź Marka Zuckerberga z podcastu Lexa Friedmana, także polecamy sobie cały podcast obejrzeć.
You know, the way that I come to all of this stuff is, I basically studied psychology and computer science. So all of the work that I do is sort of at the intersection of those things. I think most of the other big tech companies are building technology for you to interact with. What I care about is building technology to help people interact with each other. So I think it's a somewhat different approach than most of the other tech entrepreneurs and big companies come at this from. And a lot of the lessons in terms of how I think about designing products come from some just basic elements of psychology, right? In terms of, our brains, you can compare it to the brains of other animals, we're very wired to specific things, facial expressions, right? I mean, we're very visual, right? So compared to other animals, I mean, that's clearly the main sense that most people have. But there's a whole part of your brain that's just kind of focused on reading facial cues. So, when we're designing the next version of Quest or the VR headset, a big focus for us is face tracking and basically eye tracking so you can make eye contact, which again isn't really something that you can do over video conference. It's sort of amazing how much how far video conferencing has gotten without the ability to make eye contact, right? It's sort of a bizarre thing if you think about it. You're like looking at someone's face, sometimes for an hour when you're in a meeting, and like you looking at their eyes to them doesn't look like you're looking at their eyes. So
you're always looking, past each other, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess you're right. You're not sending that signal.
You're trying to.
Right, you're trying
like
to.
A lot of times, or at least I find myself, I'm trying to look into the other person's eyes.
But they don't feel like you're looking into their eyes.
So then the question is, all right, am I supposed to look at the camera so that way you can, have a sensation that I'm looking at you? I think that's an interesting question. And then, with VR today, even without eye tracking and knowing what your eyes are actually looking at, you can fake it reasonably well, right? So you can look at like where the head poses, and if it looks like I'm kind of looking in your general direction, then you can sort of assume that maybe there's some eye contact intended, and you can do it in a way where it's okay. Maybe it's not a fixated stare, but it's somewhat natural. But once you have actual eye tracking, you can do it for real, and I think that that's really important stuff. So when I think about Meta's contribution to this field, I have to say it's not clear to me that any of the other companies that are focused on the metaverse or on virtual and augmented reality are going to prioritize putting these features in the hardware, because like everything, they're trade-offs, right? I mean, it adds some weight to the device. Maybe it adds some thickness. You could totally see another company taking the approach of let's just make the lightest and thinnest thing possible. But I want us to design the most human thing possible that creates the richest sense of presence. And because so much of human emotion and expression comes from these like micro movements. If I like move my eyebrow, a millimeter, you will notice, and that like means something. So the fact that we're losing these signals in a lot of communication, I think is a loss. And so it's not like, okay, there's one feature and you add this, then it all of a sudden is going to feel like we have real presence. You can sort of look at how the human brain works and how we express and kind of read emotions, and you can just build a roadmap of that, of just what are the most important things to try to unlock over a 5 to 10 year period, and just try to make the experience more and more human and social.
When do you think would be a moment, like a singularity moment for the metaverse, where there's a lot of ways to ask this question, but, people will have many or most of their meaningful experiences in the metaverse versus the real world? And actually, it's interesting to think about the fact that a lot of people are having the most important moments of their life happen in the digital sphere, especially now during COVID, like even falling in love or meeting friends or getting excited about stuff that is happening on a 2D digital plane. When do you think the metaverse will provide those experiences for a large number, like
I think it's a really good question. There was someone, I read this piece that framed this as a lot of people think that the metaverse is about a place, but one definition of this is it's about a time when basically immersive digital worlds become the primary way that we live our lives and spend our time. I think that's a reasonable construct. And from that perspective, I think you also just want to look at this as a continuation, because it's not like, okay, we are building digital worlds, but we don't have that today. I think, you and I probably already live a very large part of our life in digital worlds. They're just not 3D immersive virtual reality, but, I do a lot of meetings over video, or I spend a lot of time writing things over email or WhatsApp or whatever. So what is it going to take to get there for kind of the immersive presence version of this, which I think is what you're asking. And for that, I think that there's just a bunch of different use cases, right? I think when you're building technology, I think a lot of it is just you're managing this duality where on the one hand, you want to build these elegant things that can scale and have billions of people use them and get value from them. And then on the other hand, you're fighting this kind of ground game where there are just a lot of different use cases and people do different things, and like you want to be able to unlock them. So the first ones that we basically went after were gaming with Quest and social experiences. And this is, it goes back to when we started working on virtual reality. My theory at the time was basically people thought about it as gaming, but if you look at all computing platforms up to that point, gaming is a huge part. It was a huge part of PCs. It was a huge part of mobile, but it was also very decentralized, right? There wasn't, for the most part, one or two gaming companies. There were a lot of gaming companies, and gaming is somewhat hits-based. I mean, we're getting some games that have more longevity, but in general, there were a lot of different games out there. But on PC and on mobile, the companies that focused on communication and social interaction, there tended to be a smaller number of those, and that ended up being just as important of a thing as all of the games that you did combined. I think productivity is another area. That's obviously something that we've historically been less focused on, but I think it's going to be really important.
With workroom, or do you mean productivity in the collaborative aspect?
Yeah, I think that there's a workrooms aspect of this, like a meeting aspect, and then I think that there's like a Word, Excel, productivity. You're working or coding or what knowledge work, right? It's as opposed to just meetings. So you can kind of go through all these different use cases. Gaming, I think we're well on our way. Social, I think we're just the kind of preeminent company that focuses on this, and I think that's already on quest becoming if you look at the list of what are the top apps. Social apps are already, number 1, 2, 3. So that's kind of becoming a critical thing. But I don't know, I would imagine for someone like you, it'll be, until we get, a lot of the work things dialed in, right? When this is just like much more adopted and clearly better than Zoom for VC, when, if you're doing your coding or your writing or whatever it is in VR, which it's not that far off to imagine that, because pretty soon you're just gonna be able to have a screen that's bigger than, it'll be your ideal setup, and you can bring it with you and put it on anywhere and have your kind of ideal workstation. So I think that there are a few things to work out on that, but I don't think that that's more than 5 years off.